a question that I'm asking is, so how are you feeling being back at work? And the feedback is, I really can't do another year like last year, or I am assessing whether I still want to be here and what needs to change, or I'm so sick and tired of the empty promises and how am I going to change?
Pause. Because you're giving it all away now and you're not going to repeat it when we have to say it. So stop.
I can repeat
Engage.
anything. You just need to ask me the right questions. 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Not Us podcast, hosted by two sisters, myself, Angela, and my gorgeous sister, Sam, where we talk about change, choice, and we celebrate all those messy bits in between.
We're not licensed doctors, therapists, gurus, or witches. The opinions and the stories expressed in this episode are our own for entertainment only and subjected to change. Swearing is likely. And please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe.
Yes. Okay, so today's topic is one that's close to home. Because as we go about our lives, we're always assessing where we're at, thinking, what does my year look like? What does my life look like? Would you like to tell our audience what we're talking about today, sis?
We're speaking about jobs and how, especially in January, when we come back after we've had a couple of weeks off, I've definitely been doing the rounds, phoning friends and family members. And a lot of the conversation is around being back at work. I was saying to Angela earlier on, the feedback that I'm getting is really 3 camps. So one, people are saying, I can't have another year like last year, so what needs to change? Or assessing what they're staying for or what their exit strategy is. And we thought this would be a really good conversation to have because it's so fresh. And I think, well, I wonder whether January gives us a really good point to stop, pause, and think, or if it just coincides with doing reviews for last year and setting goals for the upcoming year. So it makes perfect sense that we do that for ourselves. So we're going to explore that a little bit.
Might even become more relevant when it gets to bonus season. And suddenly people are like, do I want to keep doing this job? I suppose the question is, are you driven by money or are you driven by the desire to do something that you absolutely love?
So I am driven by purpose, and I'm very much driven by finding the answer to why. I could not be in an environment where I didn't feel like I was adding to the direction of where the organization was going or that I had an impact on that. I've worked in both large corporations and scale-ups. I found myself really enjoying more of the scale-up environment because there's much bigger scope for influence. For me, purpose and being able to contribute is a big driving force from a career perspective. What about you?
Yeah. I'm definitely the same. I think after many moons of being a performer, you very much do it because you love it and you're passionate about it and you're impacting people's lives and all of that. As I've gone on a little bit in my life and as I've started doing a little bit more corporate world, can I just sidebar? I spoke about getting on in life. Did you see the smile, if you're watching this on YouTube, on her face where she thought, here's an opportunity for me to comment on Angela's age? I'm just adding that in there. She's
You do it for yourself. As I got on in age. And as I got on in life. Why don't you just say, as I've explored more opportunities available to me. Come on, Elizabeth.
Oh, Lord have mercy on my soul. So as I was saying, as I've matured, that sounds like I'm cheddar, when the joys and the freedom of youth start looking a little bit different, then I guess money has become a little bit more important. But I could never do a job for a long period of time just because it was paying me a lot of money, unless outside of that job, I was doing a massive amount of work that was contributing to the world that fulfilled me hugely. I'm quite driven by people pleasing, I suppose. As a performer, you're all about pleasing an audience. So if I'm in an organization of any kind, I want to feel like I'm making a difference, like they really feel like my presence counts and I'm really showing up in a great way that fulfills me. So I do have a lot of identity in how I show up when I'm working.
Yes, I wanted to say is you do get to a stage where you realize that purpose has to equal a
Bored.
decent salary. The value has to be there. And I've been in marketing for 22 years. And like yourself, I realized that pats on the back don't pay your bond and your mortgage and your cars and give you the lifestyle that you want. So I think it's all great to say that we're not money driven, but I would be really pissed off if I found out that I was doing the same job as someone else and getting paid less.
Yeah. And that's been a plight for women around the world.
And continues to be a reality that we're not getting paid the same for the same jobs done. Okay, so people come back from vacation in January asking the big questions, and there's a framework that I've seen from the conversations. It's stay, shape, or exit. And maybe this is a good framework to consider. If you're looking at what do you want from your current role, what's going to help you stay? What am I learning right now that will increase my future potential? 6 or 12 months' time from now, what am I learning in my current role? Or what do I need to invest in learning in my current role that's really going to increase my potential for the future? And what would I be proud of if I didn't leave? So, what more do I need to get out of this role? Is it more skills? It might be delivering certain projects.
That fall into shape. That's
Let's
for part
stay.
of
Let's stay.
stay. Okay.
Shape would be what are the 3 conditions to make this role sustainable? So, whether that's scope, manager, flexibility, compensation, your team, your workload. The second question to maybe ask is what am I tolerating that I should renegotiate? And for women, I think negotiation is difficult. I know that I've often felt quite intimidated to renegotiate the terms or the conditions of my work, even when it would have been within my best interest to do so. And then the third part is exit. So define 2 to 3 red lines: health, values, stagnation, disrespect, instability that you will not tolerate. And that would be an indication for you to exit. And then define your runway. And that could be savings, time, energy, or support. So maybe 3 buckets to consider as a framework for yourself and questions to ask yourself if you do find yourself in the situation where you're going, I don't know if I can do this again for another year. Or do I want to? What needs to change?
That's a really good framework to use. I've not actually heard that before. And I think, although I have been doing a corporate role for the last 10 years already, I always feel like I'm still catching up. And why I say that is because when it comes to real issues like women not earning the same amount as their counterparts, having to really fight their way up the corporate ladder, all of those very real subjects and challenges that women have had, I feel like I haven't really experienced them. And now maybe a lot has changed in the last 10 years. And so I often feel like I don't really know how to ask those questions, fight that fight. I'm still learning 10 years in, and I'm still very much learning. So that is a great framework. I'm wondering though, Sam, we are speaking from people who have jobs. And what about people who are reassessing in a fear-based way? So maybe they are doing redundancies, which we know is happening globally quite a lot. People are afraid of losing their job, so they're just happy to take the handouts, the very minimum, just to keep a job. And for people who actually can't find work and are starting to go, okay, I'm super skilled. Am I going to have to take absolutely anything and earn the bare minimum?
That's the reality of the world that we operate in. We've seen a lot of organizations in the last year do future-ready retrenchments. And if you look at Europe, the unemployment rate is only 4.9%. So it's relatively low, but it is increasing and it is on the rise. And what you are seeing is that the competition is incredibly high at the moment. There is a lot of fear-based hiring on both sides. It's not unusual for people to feel, well, I need a salary, so I'll take what I can get. And then for organizations to be going, well, we need to find the right people now, not let's make sure we've got the right team in place for when we need them. What you're finding is that there are jobs, but there's really high competition for the roles. Then salaries are down, like sometimes 20% down. And so you really then have to weigh it up. If you have the runway, if you have the savings and you have the support, then you're in a different position. Then you also have to look at your skill set and your network, especially at a more senior level. Your network is your net worth. And that becomes key the more senior you become, because you want to be in a position where people are letting you know of roles before they're being advertised. Because once they're advertised, and if you're on LinkedIn, what you'll see is between 100 and 500 people applying for the same roles. And that's at a senior level. And so what I would say is network is important. And I've been notoriously bad at building out my network, especially in the Netherlands. So I'm already on the back foot there because I occupy a senior role. So again, 2026, that's the focus, building out my network. And then skills. Are you upskilling? And what are the skills, especially with AI, or generative AI and AI, which has become a lot more mainstream? What are the skills that technology cannot replace? And there's a lot of human skills that technology cannot replace. AI is fantastic. And I say this because I come from that background. AI can automate and do a lot of stuff that takes time, but the human element of it doesn't replace. And that's where you really need to think about, what are my human skills? So communication becomes important. Look at what the human skills are within your role that cannot be automated. Now, you've pivoted your career from fear-based, from necessity, and from a more empowered place. What would your feedback or commentary be on that same question?
Yeah. So to elaborate on that, I had a career as a performer for my entire life, however long that was. She's smiling again. She wants to discuss my age. I'm telling you this right now, if you're not actually seeing this. But I had a career as a performer, and I had been on a world tour of cats for about 18 months. And I came back to find out that my personal life was changing significantly. And I suddenly realized that I needed to grow up a little bit and start making sure that I could look after myself and not rely on anyone else around me. And I know a lot of people do get locked in if it's a one-income household, or where you are reliant on someone else to be able to do the job that you get to do, the fun job. And so that decision was partly made out of, all right, I've got to make some new choices here. But it was also a trauma response to what was happening in my personal life. Fortunately, I had a really good network, and I was able to connect quickly. And I remember I had a friend who had an agency, and they were doing something that was way out of my comfort zone. But I kind of had some of the skills. They needed someone to do workshops for relocation. And I'm like, well, I do acting workshops, masterclasses. I'm sure that I can do this. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. And so it was kind of like a combination of taking a chance, not limiting your own self with your own self-judgment and criticism. I think assessing what skills that you have that you don't realize are transferable. A lot of people have often asked me now, well, how do you go from being a performer to being a businesswoman? Well, actually, being a performer serves me really well. It means I can hold myself really well. I can listen really carefully. I can improvise. We learn so many skills when you're performing and live performing, and loads of others. So I was able to transfer my skills really quickly while I was going through the change. And then I was like, oh, I got used to earning a fixed salary. And then kind of a little bit locked into that for my next choice. And then I got to a place where COVID was like, okay, the whole world's gone crazy. Where do I fit into it now? And from that base, I could start. And I was starting to learn more about choice and creating from that space of gratitude. I was able to look at what I had done so far, really write down from that what I was so grateful for, and not out of desperation or fear or any other place, but from that place of this is what I have, this is what I'm grateful for, this is how it serves me, but now what else would I like to create? And so I started considering what jobs I would like that would fulfill certain things, that would make me feel a certain way, that would allow me a certain lifestyle. And that's the place that I've been able to create so much more from. And it's much more fun to create from that space. So that's been my journey. And of course, I'm aware that sometimes people are applying all of these rules and still waiting for the manifestation of what they're creating to show up. But that's the journey I've taken.
In our previous episode, you had spoken about, or you put out, it's about dreaming, not from your conscious or critical adult mind, but really from the possibility mind. And I've taken that on board because I was going through pretty much what you described. Like my life felt like it was imploding and there was changes. And so when you're in that state, you are already so contracted, it's really hard to regulate your nervous system so that you can be expansive and wanting to dream a little. Why do I feel like that's a song? Dream a little. It is
Dream
probably.
a little dream with me or for me.
Well done, well done. So what I've been trying to practice over the last couple of weeks in January is one, really checking in with myself to establish how my nervous system is feeling. Because I think once your nervous system is relaxed or in a good space, then you can dream and change the world a little bit, your own world, so your own inner world. And I think when you are operating from a place of survival, it becomes really difficult to want to create and manifest and look at possibilities. And I think the one thing that I was really focused on was I need a job. I just need to find work. And now it's a case of, okay, well, that's fine. That's one of the tasks. But what do you actually want your life to look like that this job is going to contribute to or be part of? And in the past, I've been a workaholic. So I would work 14 to 18-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week. And what I would like to have happen in the future is I would like to have a balance. And there has to be purpose outside of your job. Because when you are a workaholic and you're no longer working, it strips your identity. And not only like on the external, it strips your purpose for being as well. And that's quite a highway to fall down. And so for me, the focus is really about my next job being part of my life and not my life. Whereas in the past, it certainly has been my life.
Yeah, that's quite a good point. If I think of being a performer where it's so much what you do, who you are, and it's all consuming in your life just by the nature of it. When I first stepped into corporate, I only knew how to operate like that. So it felt like everything was just a contract, and I would work the most ridiculous long hours, but with that same high adrenaline and energy. And of course, you can only do that for so long before you burn out, or you realize that if you're employed by someone, that if the company's got to make strategic decisions, you can become a bit of a number, even if you're really good at your job. So you start reassessing. But I also went in with full workaholic mode.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, though, it's that identity. Like, who are you outside of that space? So if we could work on who we are outside of the space, we could create so much more that is aligned with who we are. Because I think just in terms of being more open to receiving, dreaming, and creating, when you are desperate and you're in fear and you need to pay your bills, and I assure you, I know about that so well, having given the kind of career I've had, I understand that kind of panic where anyone would ask you, would you do anything? And you would do absolutely anything because you need to make the money. So I understand coming from that point. But if it's possible to get to a place, as you say, where you can relax your nervous system so that you can expand a little and you can dream a little, it means that you will get a job and something that you love and something that's more aligned to you. And I think it's a biological thing, right? If you're in fight and flight, your body goes into lockdown and it is solar focused, everything. Your vision is focused on survival and getting from here to there. Whereas if you can take your foot off that pedal and not be in full fight or flight, you can open up and see opportunities that otherwise you would not see. You could explore other avenues, new job directions that you otherwise couldn't be open to because you're coming from a constricted panic space. So that, I suppose, is where the magic lies in this trying to get a job, is doing what you have to do, but at the same time trying to take yourself into that space where you can expand and see what magic the universe can actually bring to you.
And just as you were describing that fight or flight, the mechanics of it, that's really good in certain scenarios, short sprints of it. Whereas a lot of people in corporate are expected to operate at that level all the time. So you're chasing quarters, you're chasing numbers, etc. Last year, there was a LinkedIn article that I wrote about farmers versus hunters, and it was on the back of an event that I had attended. And from a sales perspective, you often speak about either you are looking for someone who is a farmer, and that's normally your account managers or your customer success, but they really are going to grow the account, or you're looking for a hunter, and a hunter is normally someone who goes out and finds new business. But it was really interesting for me to consider that from a marketing perspective, because marketeers generally are nurturers. And in a lot of corporate spaces, marketeers have been asked to be hunters, supporting sales in finding new opportunities, etc. And when we're looking at businesses and development of teams, it's important to have a combination. Because yes, you need to find new opportunities and new businesses, but you also need to grow those businesses. And so you can't have a company full of hunters and you can't have a company full of farmers. And it's the same thing with us as individuals. There's a time that you have to be a hunter and there's a time that you have to be a farmer. And you're going to be more naturally the one or the other. But it's not to say that you shouldn't have the skills to hop in and out. And I'm wondering, and we've seen this more with the younger generation as we see the rise of the gig economy and how people are not wanting to be in one particular corporate or one organization. I'm wondering if that is probably more the future, especially when we're looking at skills based. What are the skills that I can offer for this particular role? But I wonder if it's not maybe a healthier way of doing things. I think the idea of being employed is quite a recent concept, whereas before it was very much you had a trade, you delivered that trade, you were reimbursed for that trade. This idea that you go into an organization and you grow your career, I think has only really been around since the 50s or a little bit before that, maybe after the Second World War. So it's really about being more in control of your career and your job opportunities is what we all need to be more in control of, as opposed to outsourcing that power and assuming that a company is going to keep you in employment from the day you start until you retire, because that doesn't exist. And then it's about building out your network and then ensuring that you have the skills to keep you employable. And employable, whether that's a gig, contract, whether that's longer term. Those are the three things that I think we all need to kind of invest in throughout the year. So when we're looking at the reset mode and we're looking at whether or not a job is right for me or what needs to change, I think there's three things that we need to be considering. And remember the stay, shape, and exit.
Can I add something else into the mix? And it's a question just based on my thoughts around, you've obviously hired a lot of teams. So you know what it's like to be on both sides of the desk, so to speak. So have a think about what the thing is that you most look for in a candidate who's coming to you for employment. As you're thinking about that, I wanted to just say there's something about assessing what your skills are, knowing what your passion is, but within all of that, it's how you show up at a job interview and how you are able to be yourself while still trying to let people see the very best of what you can bring to the table. And why I say that is I used to give masterclasses on auditioning, and we've all watched the various talent shows that are on TV, and you see these terrified people coming in and performing and the judgment that's on it. And I think that's just set people up for life of being scared and not being able to be themselves. But for me, one of the most powerful things I've had as someone who's constantly auditioned and then changing careers is showing up as myself, really being me in an audition, like really dropping my walls and barriers and connect people. Because once you get into a space of desperation and you constrict everything and you feel like you need to be a different version of yourself, a better version of yourself, the best version that they may want, you don't actually know what they're looking for half of the time. You've got a brief.
Yeah.
So the only way to really, for me, is to show up as myself completely. Here is my skill set. Here's what I can do. Here's what I've done. This is what I'm really good at, and this is what I'm passionate about, without excuses. Not dimming parts of yourself down and editing yourself so much that whoever's looking, who's hiring, doesn't get a true picture of you. Because then if you get hired, you suddenly then show up as yourself and they're like, well, what did we get? That's not what we thought we were getting. Or you never feel like you can fully be yourself in that workspace because you don't actually fit in there. And so I'm just wondering, when you have hired people, when you're in that process, what is it that you're looking at?
Well, of course, it's always dependent on the role that I'm hiring for. But whether we like to believe this or not, it's always going to come down to a vibe. So even in organizations where they have scorecards, etc., how someone's going to score you is whether or not your energy vibes with them. And while you were saying about showing up as your true, authentic self, there was a part of me that was going, yeah, it's overrated. But as I was going, yeah, that's overrated, actually. There is truth in that. When going into an interview, any kind of interview, try and be as authentically yourself. Yes, of course, it's the polished up version, but don't try and be someone you think they're looking for. And I've done that. In actual fact, recently, I toned down my fire 100%. And I didn't get the role. And the feedback was that they thought that I wasn't assertive enough. And listen, there's one thing we don't need is to accuse me of
any more assertive.
But coming out of that, I thought to myself, oh, why did you do that? Actually, because I mean, I've been in many interviews, both being interviewed and interviewing. And it really does come down to attitude. So for me, when I'm hiring into my team, if two candidates have the same skill set or experience, I'm going to look at which person do I actually resonate with. And that's just human dynamics. We want to work with people that we think we might be able to get along with. I certainly don't want everyone to look the same, feel the same, etc. We've had the conversation that I do like diversity, but it is whether or not you energetically vibe. And there's just some people that you can't name what it is, but you just don't like the energy. I know that I'm going to struggle with this person. But I think it's important to show up as yourself. Of course, it's polished and you want to be the polished version of that. But if you are a passionate person and you're someone who is opinionated and it's important that your voice has a space. It's important that you are in an environment that allows for that. So the lesson that I took, I would rather not get the role because of who I truly am, as opposed to not getting the role and I know that that's not who I am. This wasn't like a huge departure from who I am. I just was a lot more diplomatic in terms of how I would normally approach things. I do want to say that it was a contract role, so my approach would be very different when I'm doing like a short stint versus a longer stint, because my experience does allow me to go, okay, well, when I hand over the baton, what do I need to be handing over? There's no point in me creating something that can't be executed beyond my time there. I would say attitude is important, and I'm using the word attitude, but it's attitude over aptitude. So you might have all the skills, because sometimes you have people that are great, they have all the skills, but they're just going to be poison in your environment, or they're going to be poison in your team. And so you don't need that, or no one wants to work with them. So attitude is really, really important. And that's the soft skills that are so valid and so important, because machines can't replicate that. And then if you don't get the role, maybe it's not the right environment for you. There's no point in being in an environment that you cannot be yourself. And we're not talking about warts and all, because there is a level of professionalism that we all need to have in a professional environment. But you still want to feel valued in the organization. You want to feel that your voice is heard. Again, this is from my perspective. These are the things that are important for me. So when I'm looking at a job, what's really important is, am I going to be treated the same way as my peers, male and female? Is this the right culture? Do we have the same values? And then, of course, am I being remunerated fairly? And I have those discussions in interviews. So those are the three values that are important to me. And the culture of the organization is what's going to underpin everything.
Good point.
Did that answer your question, Angela?
Yeah, it did. I actually just want to put out there, Sam and I are obviously having this conversation, and it's for a certain belt of people who are looking for employment. This is not covering off people who haven't worked for a year or 2 years and are on the breadline. So there's a much broader conversation to be had around this. So just know that we're not insensitive to that, but we're speaking from our own experience. And
we're also not career coaches. And we're not career coaches. We're not HR professionals, but we have been in the work environment and trading our skills for a salary, or I don't know, what do you do on stage? Do they give you a salary?
No, they just pay you in wine. Of course.
What do you call it? The salary, or do you call it something else?
Salary, or your wages, depending on your salary.
Sorry, salary or wages.
It's the same as everywhere else. And the same goes for, for those of you listening who are performers, or it's really anyone who's auditioning, applying for a role. It's first and foremost, don't just grab the scraps of anything. Go for what it is that you would really like to create in your life. Show up, as Sam is saying, as authentically yourself as you possibly can. And know the company that you are choosing to be part of, because it takes up so much time in your day and in your life and in your family's life that it's really important that you just don't bring any old thing into your space, because there are repercussions to that you may not see right away, but further down the line. Choose well.
If you have to take the scraps, because sometimes you have to just make sure that there's money coming in. Think about the framework. You might need to take a role that's not ideal, but it brings in enough money for you to survive. But then what are the skills that you need to get in order for the next role to become available to you?
And that's really important, because it's often easier to create or get a job when you're employed. Not only from the fact that on paper you are working, but energetically, it's often harder for us to create from that baseline as it is from, well, I've got something. So you're not quite as desperate. So you get to create and choose a little bit. You have the luxury of choosing a little bit more.
And what I was saying earlier on about network skills and direction, and I'm saying this like I'm an expert, but it's something that I'm adopting, is that you take control of the direction that your career is going in. So no one else's responsibility. So that's upskilling or joining associations or whatever that might look like, building out your network and then building out your skills so that you are employable. And you can reset at any time. Treat yourself as a business.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've always said, even as a full-time performer, treat yourself as a business. There's also something in there, though, that is around receiving. At the moment, this month, Sam and I are talking a lot about receiving and expanding our receiving. But there's also the flip side to that is giving. So when I look at any company that I'm interested in working with or cast, it's what can I contribute? What contribution can I bring here as well? And am I keeping myself sure-fit, upskilled, all of those things, so that I'm also bringing to the table, it's not only what can you give to me, but it's what can I give to you. So there's just the give and the receive, the ebb and the flow that always needs to be part of that. So if we're asking for this really amazing big job, are we putting in the work to make sure that we are ready for that? Yeah.
Okay, sis, how are we going to wrap this up?
Well, with tequila, as we always do. Maybe I have a little closing reflection here. And it's something that I saw, so I'm just going to have a look at it. But it says, wherever you are with work right now, starting out, starting again, staying put or letting go, you're not behind. You are responding to life. What is work giving you right now? What is it costing you right now? And if fear wasn't leading, what might you choose? If money wasn't the objective, what would you choose to create in your life right now? Our worth is never measured by our job title. So that's what I think I would like to leave us with.
And with that, I say cheers.
Cheers. We're taking it in turns, being in public places or driving when one of us can't get the tequila.
Okay.
Thank you, sis, for this conversation. I feel like it's one we may continue on again in the future.
We absolutely will, especially with Women's Month coming up in March. So Women's Day, well, I'll make it a month. It's now declared a month. Thanks for listening. Email us at notuspod@gmail.com and subscribe to our channels on Instagram and Facebook. And you can catch us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Until we chat again.
Bye for now.
Bye.